Okay, so without further ado, we have Miss Jessica Patterson. You have the floor, lady.
All right. Monica, can you hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am, I can.
All right. Well, it's such a pleasure to be here with all you Rich Chicks 360s. I'm truly honored. As Monica said, my name is Jessica Patterson. I am the managing owner of the law offices of Jessica Renee Patterson. I am located right here in Houston. I'm a small boutique law firm. I specialize in business as well as estate planning, that's wills, trust, and probate. And I also do school law. I met Monica a while ago when I was working with the school district. I was a diagnostician at that time, so I do have a passion for special needs and helping students and families navigate the education system. But today I am pleased to be here to talk to you a little bit about business. Um, I absolutely love my business clients. I love talking to business owners. You all are such entrepreneurs, you're go-getters, you're exciting. You know, you have a product, you want to put it out in the commerce, and you just, you want to be successful. And so I'm just here to ride your coattail and hope you take me along the way as a business attorney. So one of the things I specialize is in business formations. And I like to talk to business owners about business formations because I promise you, if I had a dollar for every time a business owner told me they formed an LLC because they felt like they just had to, or someone else, they saw it on Twitter or somewhere that, hey, you're supposed to form an LLC if you want a business, then I probably would be retired on a tropical island somewhere. Um, and as many of you may know, LLC is not the only form of business, but it is an important one. So I wanted to talk to you about LLCs, but I also want to talk to you about some other business structures that I see pop up frequently and that are very popular. So the first one is a sole proprietorship. A sole proprietorship is anybody out there that's doing a business, but you haven't fully formed your business with the Secretary of State in Texas. You were somebody that had an idea, take it t-shirt making. You wanted to make t-shirts and you bought your Cricut machine and you are Jessica's t-shirt business and you didn't do any formal organizations, but you're owning a business. You have clients, you're selling your product, um, you're generating an income. You're what we call a sole proprietor. You're doing business as yourself. Um, a lot of times, sole proprietors do what's called a DBA, and that's another one I want to talk about DBAs because a lot of people unfortunately think a DBA is a business. A DBA is not a business. I don't know who needed to hear that, but a DBA is not a business. A DBA is just a name. You're doing business as something. So it's very popular for sole proprietors to get what's called a DBA. And, they go and register with the counties and feel like their business is protected or have some type of legal protections. Another business structure is a partnership. Now, partnerships are really popular. Partnerships are just when two people come together, two or more people come together, they decide, hey, instead of you doing this t-shirt business by yourself, let's do it together. And a partnership is interesting because you really don't have to have any formal agreements to enter into a business relationship with somebody else. The law just says you just have to have the intent. You just have to say, hey, you and I are working on this t-shirt together. We kind of talked about it over lunch and we toyed with the idea a little bit. And if one person starts proceeding, then the law can look at it as, okay, y'all are in a business. Again, that type of arrangement doesn't require any formal organization. You don't register anything with the state. You just start acting. It's just two people getting together saying, hey, I want to do this business. So sole proprietorships and general partnerships, they're easy to form. You may have already formed one. You may be in one and you don't know. Um, but they don't come with any type of legal protections. Meaning, in both of those structures, whether you're a sole proprietorship or a partnership, if someone wants to sue you, like Monica alluded, we are a sue happy nation. We're actually a mediation happy nation because no one really wants to take it all the way to a full blown trial. They usually want to quit before then because it's just the cost of litigation is so expensive. But with both of those entity structures that I discussed, the problem with them is that your personal assets can be touched. Meaning, say that t-shirt business, something went wrong and somebody wants to sue Jessica's t-shirts, okay? Jessica's t-shirts, we just started, so we have about $50 in the account. But somebody wants to sue me for $200. Well, they can come after the $50 in my business account, my Jessica's T-shirts account, but they can also get the rest from my personal account. And if I don't have it in my personal account, that means they can come after my car, my home, my inheritance, or any other thing of valuable that I have personally. So that's why those types of structures are not favored. And then with the partnership, say my partner breached a contract, but they came after my business and then they came after my partner doesn't have enough money, my business doesn't have enough money. Again, they can come after my little coins. And that is not something I think any of us really wants to be not only obligated to, personally for the business, but also obligated personally for, the mistakes of others. So that is why I encourage, people to look into other systems like an LLC. What an LLC is an LLC is a limited liability company. It's sort of that hybrid company. It's a new type of entity that wasn't around as long as sole proprietorships or partnerships, but it's a new entity that basically is a hybrid of a corporation and a partnership. So it kind of gives you the best of both worlds, where you really get to truly feel like you're owning your business. It doesn't have all the formalities as a corporation, but you don't have to have shareholders. There's no requirements for you have to have special meetings every year. There's no real strict formalities other than you have to register your business, your LLC with the Secretary of State, and you have to pay the required filing fee. After that, your LLC is formed. Once approved, your LLC is formed and it has unlimited duration. And as long as you run your LLC like an LLC, meaning, we'll talk a little bit more later on about ways that you can make sure you're running your LLC like an LLC, but as long as you're truly running an LLC, then that same t-shirt business we talked about earlier, if something goes wrong, I don't have to stress out my husband thinking that our personal bank account is going to be touched, or our personal assets are going to be touched. So if I have only that $50 in that business account and I didn't do anything intentionally like negligent, then the court is going to say, hey, yeah, I know she was wrong, but you can only go after that little $50 in her account. You can't go any further and touch her personally. So those are some of the reasons, for and against some of those other business structures. But the thing with an LLC is if you are not running your business like an LLC, it will default to a partnership or a partnership or sole proprietorship. Okay, I'll say that again. If you are not running your business like an LLC, it will default back to a sole proprietorship or a partnership. So that is something very important to keep in mind. And I always like to talk to people about formations because it's how you start is going to be the most important part of your business. Yes, the LLC is the one that costs a little bit more than the other ones, and it requires a little bit more startup, but then you don't want to cheat yourself. You don't want to cheat your business. So how you start truly, truly matters in terms of the law. Let's see. Were there any questions about that so far? And you can always add questions in the chat feature. And if there's anything that I need to expound upon, these are just my little talking points I have here. But, it's always good to know what is it that y'all want to talk about. So if there's anything you want to add to the questions, please stop me and let me know. I'm going to try to stay up to date. And I guess Monica can let me know if a question comes in.
Yes, and we have one from Miss Tony. She asks, how do you run an LLC?
Oh, that's a good question. Okay, so one thing I recommend everyone having, and it's not absolutely mandatory, but I always recommend people having an operating agreement. An operating agreement, when you start your LLC, basically outlines how your LLC is going to be structured, who's going to own what, how you're going to enter into contracts, how are you going to assess liabilities? If something happens to you, what's going to happen to your LLC? Because one thing people don't think about, but if you pass away, your LLC is still in existence. So if your LLC is still in contracts, then somebody's going to be responsible for those contracts, and it's probably going to be your estate. It doesn't just automatically end just because you pass. You want to keep your funds separate. You're going to hear one of the biggest things people get in trouble for is the commingling of funds, not keeping separate bookkeepings, not keeping separate records, keeping all your accounts together. That's a good, okay. So that is one thing that people, struggle with the LLC. Another thing that I see a question, what are the difference between an S Corp, C Corp, and an LLC? That's a very good question, okay? And I think that derives from a big misconception people have. People say all the time, oh, I don't have an LLC, I have an S Corp, or I have a C Corp. All an S Corp and a C Corp is a tax election for your LLC. So one of the benefits of an LLC is, like I said, with a partnership, it provides a lot of flexibility. It provides a flexibility on how you want your LLC to be owned. And it also provides flexibility on how you want your LLC to be taxed. And I'm not a tax expert, but I can give a little bit of information about taxes. So for taxes, a sole proprietorship, how they're typically taxed is it's called pass-through, meaning any money that you make as a sole proprietor, you show it on your taxes, your personal taxes, and you pay taxes all together. So say you personally, your teacher, you made $60,000 this year, but your t-shirt business made $30,000 this year. So that's $90,000 you will report on your taxes. That's what's passed through. That is also the same for partnerships. Partnerships also have that same pass through. Well, the thing about an LLC, that's why I said it's a hybrid between a corporation and a partnership, is an LLC gets to decide, do I want to be taxed as the partnership where it's passed through, the money I make from my business gets put on my personal, or do I want to be taxed as a corporation, whether it's an S Corp or a C Corp? Do I want to tax, if I made $60,000 as a teacher, I personally pay the $60,000, I pay taxes on my 60, and then that additional $30,000, my company pays. So you can separate how you tax. And that's where the S Corp and C Corp sort of comes in. And so an LLC can be an LLC with pass-through taxation, S Corp's taxation, or C Corp taxation. And so I always, always, always encourage any business owner. One thing, I don't know if Monica has told y'all, my little slogan is get you a lawyer friend, have a lawyer friend. So I like to be people's lawyer friend, but I always, always encourage people to have a tax friend, a bookkeeping friend, because that's someone you want to sit down and talk about. Hey, I'm about to start this LLC, looking at my taxes and how I've been taxed personally. How do you suggest I elect for my LLC to be taxed? Now you can change it. So a lot of LLCs maybe start with just pass-through taxation. They say, tax me as a sole proprietorship at the beginning. And then as I grow a little bit, next year, I want to elect to be an S Corp. And so that is something you can definitely change, but I definitely encourage you to talk to a tax professional about that. So I hope that helped answer questions.
And then we had, well, I want to ask Tony if that answered her
Mhm.
second question, because then she asked what is required for an LLC. So I just want to make sure that
Okay.
that was answered for her.
Okay. So what's required for an LLC in Texas? So an LLC requires you to form or file your articles of formation with the Secretary of State, and it requires you to file a filing fee. Some things your article of formation is going to require is that you're going to have to give your name. It has to be unique. It can't be a name that's already taken. So you're going to have to do a name search. You're going to have a registered agent. A lot of people, you can either be your own registered agent or you can hire a company to be your registered agent. All a registered agent is somebody that's going to accept service on your behalf in case the Secretary of State has to send you something, or in case somebody wants to sue your business. They have to know where to send the lawsuit, who to serve. So that's where your registered agent comes into place. Keep in mind, whatever your registered agent is, that's public information. So if you choose to have that be your own home, then know that's going to be publicly displayed. As long as you are opening your LLC for any lawful purpose, the state will accept your LLC. You can choose when you want your LLC to start. And your LLC is going to last until you personally end it. So I think the filing fee is about $300, but that's pretty much all you need to do. What can you do as an LLC that can have your business default back to a sole proprietor? Okay, so that's a good question, Tony. So your LLC is when you form your LLC is going to be a separate and distinct business from you. Okay, you and your LLC are different. With a sole proprietorship, you and your business are one person. So what can you do to make your LLC revert back to a sole proprietorship or be seen legally as a sole proprietorship? You blur that distinction of separate identities. You start acting as if you and your LLC are one. One thing that people mistakenly do is that, and it seems simple, is when you enter contracts, and you enter contracts on your own behalf, or you're intending to enter contracts on your t-shirt business, but then you sign all your contracts under your name only. That can lead someone to believe that they're entering business with Jessica and not Jessica's t-shirts. So that's one way. If you commingle your funds, if you have Jessica's t-shirts in Jessica's personal savings account as one account, and when someone pays me and they pay me straight to my savings account, then to the law, it doesn't look like you're intending for your business and yourself to be seen as two separate entities. So they're going to treat you as if you're one entity. Hope that answers your question a little bit. Let's see.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you. That's good.
You're welcome. All right. So another talking point I had here is, and I kind of took these from just frequently asked questions that some of my clients come in and talk to me about. Another thing they always want to talk about is contracts. Okay. So contracts are very important, and every business owner is going to get to the point where they're going to need some form of contract. And, sometimes hiring an attorney to do contracts for you can be kind of expensive. I get it. And so we use LegalZoom, or we use all these other resources out there, templates, to create contracts, which isn't a bad thing. It's just make sure you understand the basics of a contract so that you know the contract you're putting out there or entering into is a good contract. So, basically, in simple layman's term, a contract is just an agreement between two or more people to perform a service or buy a product or do something to form a legal obligation. the basic core elements of a contract is you have an offer, you have an acceptance, you have consideration, that's something you give in exchange for the acceptance or to show your acceptance, and you have a mutual assent. Mutual assent is just a meeting of the minds. It's just saying that you and the other party intended to be in a contract, okay? So those are the basic elements of a contract, okay? You wanna make sure that when you enter a contract, the terms that you have there are not ambiguous, okay? The simpler the contract, I know sometimes you feel like the longer the contract, the better, or the more legally defined looking the contract is, the better. And if you don't know what those terms are, you might as well not have them in your contract, because you don't want to agree to something that you really don't know what it's saying. So I rather you, if you don't, have the legal know-how or can't afford to get someone to drop a really good contract for you, then you keep your contract as simple as you write it, and you keep it as simple as possible so that you can explain exactly what it means. And so the other party entering the contract knows exactly what it means, because what's not in contract law, the contract is always going to be construed against the drafter. So if you drafted the contract, then it's going to be the other person's interpretation of the contract that matters. And if their interpretation is different than your interpretation, then their interpretation wins. So you really want to make sure you're drafting a contract that you know the ins and outs. You know what those terms mean. They're not ambiguous. They know, speaking of ambiguous, one of the, this is kind of the nerd of me, one of the most famous contract cases really turns on what is the definition of a chicken? What is it? It was two companies entered into agreement, and they had two different definitions of a chicken. One person thought the chicken meant a fowl, and the other person thought the chicken meant some other type of chicken. And so when the seller was performing the contract, he was sending his version of the chicken. Well, the buyer wasn't happy, and the buyer sued, but it was the buyer's contract. So it turned against the buyer. He lost money, but they said he should have really defined what he meant by a chicken. And sometimes the courts, it can get that petty. So sometimes words that you think this is exactly what they mean, you want to really make sure it's spelled out. You don't want to be in court arguing over no chicken. You want to really make sure that what you're intending, the other person's receiving. Some things to just identify with a contract is you want to always make sure you identify all the parties involved with the contract. First and last name, address if you have it. If there's any background, prior agreements, you need to include that in the contract. So sometimes we may have a verbal agreement that our contract is contingent upon, but if we don't include that verbal agreement language in the contract saying, oh, if you do this, then this contract takes effect, then it's like that verbal agreement never really happened, okay? So you need all your background information in your contract, okay? You want to clearly define what each party's obligation is. I'm going to do this, you are going to do this, okay? You want to talk about if there's any payments, how that's going to be given. You want to talk about if you're selling something, what's the quantity, what's the duration, how long is this contract going to last? Those are things you definitely want to keep in. How you're going to handle liability, okay? That's important. Are you guys going to mediate? Are you going to put an arbitration clause in there? What are you going to do if that contract is breached? It can't be an afterthought. It has to be upfront. You can't say, oh, I assume I made you these t-shirts, you were going to pay me for the order. And then when you didn't pay me, now I got to try to figure out what I'm going to do. No, have it spelled out from the beginning. I'm going to do this, or this is going to happen if you do this. okay? Or this is not gonna happen if you don't do this, however, but make sure you have that liability built in. Um, and then also with the way things are going and everybody's business being out there, make sure you have some sort of expectations of confidentiality. You know, people are very sensitive about their personal information, and sometimes contracts can expose that. So make sure you have something in there to let people know that you're keeping information confidential, or how you're going to relay information, or if information is going to not be confidential. Make sure you all agree on that, because one of the worst things is to enter into a contract with somebody and they think that everything is going to be kept on the down low, but your intention was, oh no, I'm gonna put this all on my social media. Maybe they didn't want you highlighting their divorce. Maybe they wanted you to, keep that between y'all. So that is something that could really get you in trouble with the contract. But those are just my main tips for contracts. Did anyone have any questions about contracts, or anything that you want to discuss about that?
Quick question for you, Jessica.
Yes.
So are there anything or any factors that we should consider, or I mean, if is there any difference if we're doing contracts or agreements with people in other states, or does it matter, or should we just look for all of those things that you mentioned regardless of what state it is?
No, yes, that's a really, really, really good question. So there's this thing in contract laws called purposeful availment. And purposeful availment is basically, how are you purposely putting yourself out there to the commerce world? Okay. How are you interacting? What type of contacts are you making with people in other states? All of this makes a difference because it determines where you get sued and who can sue you, right? So say you have we have this t-shirt business, and I start advertising. I'm in Texas, but now I'm like, okay, I'm getting really good at this. My Cricut machine is on fire. And now I want to start contracting and selling my stuff out in Georgia. And then I decide, okay, now I want to start selling my stuff out in New York. And so I tell my clients, look at a map, identify your state, then look at all the surrounding states. And if your product is touching any of those states, you could be subjecting yourself to liability in those states. What that means is, you could now, if someone decides they want to sue you in Atlanta, Georgia, I may have to pack a suitcase and fly out to Atlanta, Georgia to defend myself in a lawsuit. And if anybody's ever been in a lawsuit, lawsuits don't happen just in a day. It's a lot of back and forth. You may have to get an attorney out there, because attorneys don't always are able to practice in multiple states. So your attorney friend in Texas is not going to be your attorney friend in Atlanta, or you may have to fly to Maryland and you need somebody out there. So you definitely, and I'm glad this is brought up when we talk about contracts, is because you definitely want to, as much as possible, try to pick your choice of forum. You want to pick your location. So I organize my business in Texas, one, because I live here, and two, I like Texas laws. So I want, if you are going to sue me, you're going to have to come to Texas. So I may have something built into our contract that says, and that's where we talk about our liabilities and stuff. If there's a dispute that we can't resolve through mediation, then both parties are subjecting themselves to Texas laws. The contract is construed under Texas laws. So that's something you want to include into your contract. You want to really think about your choice of forum, and know that if you're doing business in all these different places, or if your business is purposely touching all these different places, and the courts can establish that you've made sufficient contacts with that state, then you want to make sure you're protected, unless you just like to travel and you can afford to just keep going back and forth to all these different places. You definitely want to make sure you have language in your contract that's protecting you from that. Did that help answer your question, Monica?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so my other topic was business funds, but I kind of already talked about it earlier when we were talking about the commingling. Again, that's just the easiest way people get caught up. You know, we get so caught up in trying to run a successful business that we lack on the things we shouldn't lack. And unfortunately, bookkeeping is one of them. And it's one of the easiest ways because your books can be subpoenaed, your inventory logs can be subpoenaed, your bank statements, your personal and business bank statements could be subpoenaed, and the numbers don't lie. So you definitely want to make sure that you have, you know, that bookkeeper friend, or, you know, or that bookkeeping software, so that you are truly keeping your business and your personal assets separate. Because you can't say, Judge, don't come after me personally. Don't take my kids' college fund. If your business is out there, you know, breaching contracts, and then, you know, you want to hold under the protections of your LLC, but you've been commingling, you've been treating your LLC as if it's an afterthought. It's really just you're the face of the LLC. And I think that's the misconception we make, because our LLC is the most important. We're not the face of the LLC. Our LLC is the face, you know? That's why, you know, you take Google and all that stuff, you know, Google's the corporation or whatnot, but, you know, they all have logos. That's the true face, you know? We're quick to be like, oh yeah, we're the owners and all that stuff. We just want to be careful about that, because although we're proud of our business and we like to say we are our brand, we want to definitely legally distinguish between our brand and our image and our business. We want people to know that when they do business with us, they're doing business with our business. Okay. And that's also something with an LLC. People, when you have those contracts, you want to make sure people know, hey, you're entering a contract with my business, this LLC you're entering into. So any liabilities is going to come after this LLC. That is how you protect your personal money and your personal assets. Yeah, so that's what I have. I'm open for questions. Those are just my top 3 nuggets that I definitely want to talk to everyone about, and just make sure we had somewhat of an understanding. So if you have any questions, I can answer questions at this time.
Tony actually has one. She says, does an LLC need a DBA if the names are different?
Yes. So an LLC, if so say I'm Jessica's T-shirts, right? That's my LLC. And then I decided I don't want to just make T-shirts. I want to make Yeti cups, you know, design Yeti cups. So I want to be Jessica's Yeti Cup Designs. I don't necessarily have to go out and form a new LLC. I can just do a DBA under that LLC and say I'm doing business as. Things to look out for. Remember at the beginning when I said DBAs provide no protection. So if you want to be protected under your, I'm not going to say if you want to be protected under your DBA, but if you want to be protected while you're doing business as something else, then you need to make sure that the contract that you sign, you're still signing under Jessica's T-shirts. So if, say, I enter into a contract with a school to design Yeti cups for their senior class, and they are, you know, my business, Jessica's Yeti Cups. Well, on my contract, I still want to let them know, hey, you're still doing business with Jessica's T-shirts. It's just you're doing business with the assumed named Jessica's Yeti Cups, but the contract is still Jessica's T-shirts. Because remember, a DBA provides you no protection. It just allows you to use a different name. That's like, you know, you, God forbid, you go out there and you get pulled over by the cops and they say, what's your name? And instead of saying Jessica Patterson, you say, I am Maria Santiago. Okay. Yeah, that may be the name you give other people, but it's your legal name that matters. So we can have a fictitious name, but it's not going to provide us any protection.
Quick question for you.
Yes, ma'am.
So going back to the funds, does it matter if you have a business bank account or just a separate bank account from your personal that you use for business?
As long as it's for that single person. So you could have 2 checking accounts. But as long as it's for your business funds, because sometimes if you don't have an LLC, a bank may not give you an actual business checking account. That's okay. It could be a savings. You could have the money go into your savings, just as long as it shows that business funds are going to one account and it's not just going straight to your personal account. But this doesn't mean you can't pay yourself. So say, I had a big t-shirt order, I made $800 and I calculate my hours and I said it took me about 4 hours to do that stuff. So I'm going to pay myself $400. I'm going to have the $800 go to my business account and then or my savings account, whichever is separate, and I'm going to pay myself out of those funds. What I'm not going to do is take the money and put it all in my personal account and then separate it back out that way. I'm going to automatically keep things separate.
Perfect. Love it.
Yeah.
And thanks again, Brenda and Courtney and Tony, for joining. Definitely, this is your time to just pick the brain of our lawyer friend here, Jessica. Get your questions answered because we want you to be well protected.
Is this a new question? Is it always best to have lawyers compose a contract for business? Is it ever necessary to state definitions of actual words in contracts for clarity and stuff? Okay. No, you don't always need a lawyer to compose contracts for you. Like I said earlier, some of the contracts that we see online, you just go and you download it and you're like, oh, this sounds good enough. It sounds legal enough. But if you don't know what that stuff means and you can't afford to have someone look at it, which is fine, we all are there at times when we can't afford to have someone else look at it, then you just want to get back to the basics. And you just want to make sure your contract that you draft have those 4 components. It has an offer, acceptance, consideration, and mutual assent. And anything that could be misconstrued, you want to make sure it's defined and spelled out so that you know exactly what it is that you're getting into. Because I say it again, a contract is always going to be construed against the person that wrote it. So you want to make sure you have a contract that's saying exactly what it is that you want it to say.
Perfect. And then Tony asks, do you offer consultations to make sure that everything is set up properly? And if so, are your visits in person or on Zoom?
Yes, Tony, I offer consultations through my law office. I have both. I have a physical office that clients can meet me in, but I also have, I allow Zoom consultations. I know for a lot of my business clients, they're working all day, so Zoom in the evenings work better for them. So as long as they can be okay with my toddler sometimes running in the background, then Zoom works just fine.
And so if I can just give a little testimony about Jessica, just a little review. So I have personally used Jessica. I have a licensing deal with a company that I am negotiating in. And with the first agreement that they sent, I was having some questions, like she said, it was a lot of jargon and just things that I was like, I can kind of read through this and get the gist, but I just wanted to make sure that everything was legit from a legal standpoint. So I sent it to Jessica. Of course, I booked the appointment. And so after she read over it, my spirit was vexed. I was like, I'm not doing this agreement. Like she was so open, so honest, and she really just brought to my attention areas that she had concerns with. And I'm like, well, that's the whole purpose of bringing these documents to a lawyer, with their eyes and their expertise to say if something looks a little fishy or if it's just not clear. Maybe the other party isn't trying to be whatever, but if it just isn't clear, like that was my whole goal. And so because of that, I was able to reject that offer, and I did renegotiate a new offer, which I feel in my spirit so much more better about, and it actually puts my company up, or it positions my company better than the first agreement did. And so they agreed to that as well. So we're moving forward with that. So I just want to say it is super important if you have, just some type of an agreement, especially if it's, well, big or small. This one is actually pretty big for my company, but it is worth it to have a legal consultation just to make sure that you're not signing something, like she said, that could put you in the red or just put you, in a bad spot. And these are more the people who I'm doing the licensing agreement with, like they're more seasoned, like, they do these kind of deals all the time. And here I am like, well, this is my first one. So I definitely felt like I needed to have a lawyer on my team. So yes, definitely get with her if you have things that you need to have review. I just wanted to interject that.
Well, thank you, Monica. And I think the biggest thing was to kind of I saw how you felt empowered going into your negotiations. It seems like you were really willing to let's fix this. Let's make this really work for me. And that's what the contract should. Is it benefiting your business? If it's not, you want to look at some things. So I'm so glad that worked out for you, Monica.
Thank
Like I
you.
said, I just like to ride your coattails and watch all my business people just flourish, especially in this time where, they say you need multiple streams of incomes and, you need your passive and everything. And I just want to see us all be great. I think there's room at the table for everyone.
Awesome. Exactly. Any other questions, guys? I see there are no more right now in the Q&A. I think the chat has all been taken care of. And if there aren't, then we definitely thank Jessica again for taking her time and coming inside of the Rich 360 Business Academy. And if you are watching this on the replay, and if you have questions for Jessica, or if you want to book her for a consultation, Jessica, why don't you go ahead and leave your just your number and however we can get a hold of you.
Okay, and I'm also adding it to the chat.
Okay.
Okay. If you have questions or you want to just talk your business through, sometimes it just helps to have that legal sounding board. My phone number is 713-364-2525. I can also be emailed at jpatterson@jrpfirm.com. And you can always visit me at my website at www.jrpfirm.com, and you'll see all my social media handles. And I post business tips every Tuesday. I get a lot of good feedback on that. I'm also working on an ebook that I can send out, and that's just going to really give you some really good business nuggets so that you make sure that you are starting the right way.
Awesome. And then for those of you who don't know, if you are on a PC, you can save the chat. It is on the bottom right-hand corner. It's the little three dots in the square. If you touch that or click that, you should be able to download and save the chat. So if you, for some reason, just can't, she said, I didn't get Jessica's information. It's in the chat, Tony. Oh, wait. Oh, sorry. No, it's the chat is just to the panelists. Let me see. Can you change
have I
it
been
to
sending it
attendees?
wrong? I'm sorry.
No. Yeah,
I
it's
sent
a Tony.
several things. Did I send it? Okay. I'm sorry. So here we go. 713-364-2525 is my phone number, my direct line. And then J Patterson at JRP Firm is my email. And then you can always visit me at www.jrpfirm.com. And then that's where you can find information about all my social media handles and follow my YouTube and Instagram. And like I said, I try to keep it fun business tips every Tuesday.
All right. So you guys should have it. Save the chat, take a picture of it, or jot it down. But again, thank you, Jessica, for taking your time out, for coming on in. We really appreciate the information. And of course, if we have any questions, we'll definitely be sure to reach out to you. So this was really, really helpful. And I cannot wait for more people to get this information, to just feel empowered like you said, like that's the goal, is for us to feel empowered so that we as women can show up the way that we're supposed to in this business world. And we thank you for being in our corner. Appreciate it.
All right. All right. Bye, everyone. And remember, if you need anything, call your lawyer friend.
Awesome. Thanks,
Bye.
everyone. And we'll see you next week in the next training. All right. Bye.